The rain was a relentless, deafening drum on the roof of my isolated cabin. I was stoking the wood stove, grateful for its crackling warmth against the storm's chill, when a sound cut through the downpour. Not thunder, but a heavy, desperate pounding on my door. My heart jumped into my throat. No one came out this far, especially not on a night like this. I peered through the side window, but the darkness was absolute. The pounding came again, more insistent this time. Gripping the iron poker from the fireplace, I called out, "Who's there?" A man's voice, ragged and strained, answered, "Please, I need help, my car," off the road, in the ditch a mile back. Every instinct, every modern warning about strangers, screamed at me not to open that door. But another part, an older, more human part, heard the genuine terror in his voice. I slid the heavy bolt back and opened the door a crack, the poker held tight. A man stood silhouetted against the storm, soaked to the bone. Water streamed from his dark hair and dripped from his jacket. He looked to be in his late 30s, with a sharp, intelligent face that was now pale with exhaustion and fear. His eyes, a startling shade of green, met mine, and they held a plea that went beyond a simple car accident. "I'm sorry to bother you," he said, his teeth chattering. "I couldn't see a thing, I just need to call for a tow truck." He held up his hands, showing they were empty. "My name is David." I hesitated for a moment longer, then stepped back. "Come in, get by the fire." He stumbled inside, bringing the smell of wet earth and cold air with him. I bolted the door behind him and gestured to the worn armchair near the stove. "The phone's on the wall," I said, pointing to the old landline in the kitchen nook. "But service is spotty in this storm. You might not get through." He didn't move towards the phone. Instead, he sank into the chair, extending his trembling hands towards the heat. "Thank you," he whispered, his gaze fixed on the flames. I made him a strong, sweet tea, and he wrapped his hands around the mug as if it were a lifeline. We sat in silence for a while, the only sounds the roar of the storm and the pop of the firewood. "You live out here alone?" he asked finally, his voice quieter now. "I do," I said, my guard still up. "I like the quiet." He nodded, a faint, sad smile touching his lips. "The quiet is a luxury." He looked around the cabin, at my bookshelves, my knitting basket, the simple, sturdy furniture. "It feels safe here." His use of the word safe was deliberate. I studied him more closely. His clothes, though drenched, were well-made. His hands were clean, his nails neatly trimmed, but there was a raw red mark around his left wrist, like the ghost of a restraint. This was no ordinary traveler. "Where were you headed, David?" I asked, keeping my tone neutral. He looked directly at me, and the fear was back in his eyes, sharp and focused. "Away," he said simply, and then, after a long pause, he added, "There are people. They think I have something that belongs to them." My grip tightened on the arm of my chair. "Do you?" "I have information," he corrected softly, "on a USB drive, information that could put very powerful, very dangerous men in prison for a long time." He let out a shaky breath. "I was their accountant. I was supposed to be smart to keep my head down, but I got a conscience, and it's the most expensive thing I've ever owned." The pieces clicked into place. The frantic flight, the fear that was more than just the storm, the mark on his wrist. He wasn't just a stranded motorist, he was a fugitive. Just then, the faint, distant glow of headlights cut through the rain, growing brighter. David froze, his knuckles white on the mug. "They found me," he breathed, his face a mask of pure terror. I stood up and moved to the window, peering through a slit in the curtains. A black SUV with darkened windows had pulled up at the end of my long driveway, its engine idling. My own fear was a cold knot in my stomach. I was a 67-year-old woman living alone in the woods. I had no weapons, no defense against the kind of men who hunted other men for information. I looked at David, who had shrunk into the chair, looking like a cornered animal. I looked at the peaceful life I had built, the quiet solitude that was about to be shattered. And I made a choice. "Come with me," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. He looked at me, confused. "Where?" "Just come." I led him to the small, hidden door that opened into the root cellar, a cold, earth-floored space beneath the kitchen. "Get in! Don't make a sound, no matter what you hear." He didn't argue. He scrambled down the ladder, and I closed the door, sliding a rag rug over it just as a new, more authoritative knock sounded at my front door. I took a deep breath, smoothed my sweater, and opened it. Two men stood there, dressed in dark, expensive-looking coats. They were polite, their smiles professional and utterly devoid of warmth. "Ma'am, sorry to disturb you," the taller one said. "We're looking for a man. His car went off the road nearby. Have you seen anyone?" I made my eyes wide, feigning the nervousness of an old woman startled by visitors. "A man? No, no one. It's just been me and the storm all night. Is he all right?" The second man's eyes scanned the room behind me, lingering a moment too long on the two mugs on the coffee table. "You're sure? It's very important we find him." My heart was hammering against my ribs. "I'm sure. It's a terrible night to be out. Would you like to use the phone to call for help?" I offered, praying the line was still dead. The first man smiled again. "No, that won't be necessary. Thank you for your time." They left, returning to their SUV. I watched from the window as they sat there for what felt like an eternity, the red glow of their taillights like malevolent eyes in the dark. Finally, they reversed and drove away, swallowed by the storm. I waited a full 10 minutes after their lights disappeared before I opened the cellar door. David was standing at the bottom of the ladder, his face pale in the beam of my flashlight. "They're gone," I said. He climbed out, his body trembling with relief and delayed shock. You lied for me. You could have been in terrible danger." "I know," I said quietly, "but some things are more important than safety." In the morning, the storm had passed, leaving a world washed clean and sparkling. The phone line was working again. David made a single, brief call. An hour later, a nondescript sedan arrived. Two serious-looking men in plain clothes got out. They shook David's hand, and he handed one of them a small, silver object, the USB drive. Before he got into the car, he turned to me. "I don't even know your name," he said. "It's Clara," I told him. "Clara," he repeated, as if committing it to memory. "Thank you, for the tea, for the fire, for everything. You saved more than just me." I watched the car until it disappeared down the road. The quiet returned to my cabin, but it felt different now. It wasn't just an absence of sound, it was a presence. It was the memory of a choice, of a shared humanity in the dark. The stranger at my door was gone, but he had left behind a reminder that even in the most isolated of places, we are never truly alone, and that courage is not the absence of fear, but the decision that something else is more important.